going, everybody? So we have a fun review today as we're talking Den of Thieves 2 Pantera. It's finally 2025, the beginning of a new year of movies and TV shows. Usually, January has never been the greatest month for movies. It usually is seen as the dumping ground where most studios put out their terrible films they have no faith in. That stigma, however, I do think has lessened in the last couple years. The last couple years in January, we actually have had some pretty good movies. So I'm hoping that Gerard Butler and company, although usually they are the culprits of the bad movies early on in the year, I'm hoping this time around, because I enjoyed the first film, this will actually start off 2025 on a high note. Big Nick is back on the hunt in Europe and closing in on Donnie, who is embroiled in the treacherous world of diamond thieves and the infamous Panther Mafia, as they plot a massive heist of the world's largest diamond exchange. For a while there, I kind of forgot that Den of Thieves was ever actually getting a sequel. I already said I did enjoy the first Den of Thieves a fair amount. For what it was a pretty fun throwback to classic heist thrillers, nothing mind-blowing or anything within the action movie genre, but a decent enough time. The main difficulty here, though, is the fact that they took so long between Den of Thieves and this sequel. It came out back in 2018. Keep in mind, it's 2025 now. That was 7 years ago. To put in perspective how long that was, Avengers Infinity War came out in 2018. Not even Avengers Endgame, and LeBron James was actually still on the Cavaliers when Den of Thieves came out. He wasn't even on the Lakers yet. I mean, I'm not a Hollywood executive or anything, but I feel like we kind of missed the window to strike here for a sequel. More or less, Den of Thieves 2 further delivers on many of the elements I enjoyed from that original film. The scale here is definitely far larger, shifting the heist to an overseas environment, and in doing so allows the intensity all around to be far greater. To no one's surprise, probably the best thing about this sequel is kind of one of my favorite elements of the original Den of Thieves, and that is the action. By far, the action in Den of Thieves 2 is the greatest strength. The film really ups the ante in that aspect with a variety of styles of action, several of which for sure are going to get your blood pumping, and I do feel several of them are shot pretty well, which I know in some cases is kind of a low bar, but I mean, it's the truth. Sometimes action sequences these days just are not very well done. The showdowns against the Panther Mafia especially are pretty thrilling, but even down to the actual heist itself, that also is particularly awesome. Now, there are a handful of twists and turns in this sequel that kind of change things up to the formula. One of the biggest ones is something they're marketing the film on, and that's through Gerard Butler's character Big Nick essentially switching sides in the sequel. In the original film, he was a cop trying to stop heists. Now in this sequel, he's delving into the criminal world and teaming up with O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character Donnie. Or as the tagline of the movie affectionately says, the cop goes gangster. I don't think that's a particularly great tagline, but it is a tagline. Regardless, I do think they bounce off one another well in the sequel, much like they did in the original. The dynamics here, of course, are shifted a little bit here after the big reveal for Donnie's character at the end of the first Den of Thieves. The formula between the two of them has been done many times before, enemies now working together, the uncertainty on whether or not you can truly trust them while you're trying to go through this mission together. A lot of that stuff does play out exactly how you probably think it will, but I do think Gerard Butler and O'Shea Jackson Jr. hold up the film well enough, bringing different ingredients to the table. O'Shea Jackson Jr. continues to have a lot of charisma and brings a lot of fun with that charisma, while Butler's usual grit works efficiently. Admittedly, it wasn't all that difficult to buy into his character going from cop to this gangster type character, turning heel in a sense. But still, there's a novelty to him trying to pretty much become a criminal to do this heist, and getting to see how he functions being on the other side of the coin this time around. And to build off what I was saying earlier, the formula here for Den of Thieves 2 does feel very familiar. Don't get me wrong, I was having fun throughout, but a good amount of this movie does traverse some very familiar territory if you're someone that watches a lot of action movies. Whether that be talking about the story itself, what I mentioned previously as far as the shift for Nick and Donnie's relationship. Literally, it's something we've seen done in various action movies. More recent ones I can think of probably is the Fast and Furious franchise. If you just tweak a couple different details in this movie, I feel like Den of Thieves 2 could fit very well in the very middle of the Fast and Furious franchise installments, because you've got your eccentric characters, international location, mismatching of tones. One moment the movie is serious and gritty, then it shifts over into funny, goofy material. You could literally pluck O'Shea Jackson Jr. and Gerard Butler out of this and replace them with like The Rock and Vin Diesel, and it wouldn't really change much. It could very much just be a Fast and Furious installment, one of the ones probably from like the 4th through the 7th or 8th. That detail I feel like you could take as an insult or a compliment depending on how you feel about the Fast and Furious franchise. Also, a good chunk of the marketing is centered around the twists of this, because the first movie had a pretty great twist in my opinion. Of course, I'm not going to give away any of the twists here, but I feel like there's not a twist in the second film that's anywhere as big or as shocking as the one we got in the first Den of Thieves. A lot of them are fairly predictable. All around though, I think if you enjoyed the first Den of Thieves, you're just going to enjoy Den of Thieves 2 Pantera a little bit more. It's the quintessential textbook definition of serviceable sequel. I do think they waited far too long to create a sequel to Den of Thieves. By no means is this a terrible sequel in any way. I just think this definitely would have benefited a little bit more if it came out like 2 or 3 years ago. Either way, make sure you share your thoughts down below once you get a chance to check out Den of Thieves 2 Pantera. I'd love to know your thoughts down below. 2025 has just begun, so we're going to be getting a lot more stuff in the very near future, so stay tuned for that on the channel. Thank you guys, as always, checking out videos. I always do appreciate it. Make sure you like on the video, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you update reviews, reactions, unboxings, and more. For the next time, I'll see you guys later.